Welcome to Accounting with Madam Mombi. Today we are going to look at accounting for errors or rectification of errors. To begin with, we need to understand what is an error and probably differentiate it in our mind from fraud. So errors are mispostings, that is wrong postings, or wrong calculations that are made in the books of account, and they are not intentional. So they either result from lack of knowledge or just any other aspect that is not intentional. That is what differentiates errors from fraud, because fraud is intentional and very hard to uncover. So there are two types of errors. That is, there are errors that do not affect the trial balance. When I say these errors do not affect the trial balance, first of all, we need to remember that a trial balance is a listing of all the accounts and their balances, both either debit or credit. It approves the equality of the debit and credit. So errors that do not affect the trial balance, here the trial balance agrees. That is, the debit is equal to the credit. But that, despite the debit and the credit being equal, there are some errors that are there that have been made. So those kind of errors cannot be discovered by simply looking at whether the trial balance is balanced or not. We are going to look at them. The other type of errors are errors that affect the trial balance. This second category of errors, here the trial balance does not agree. That is, the debits and the credits do not agree. So simply by looking at the trial balance in terms of the totals of both columns of the debit and credit, you can identify that there is an error because one side either has more or less than the other, and that will mean that there are errors affecting the trial balance. We can start with errors not affecting the trial balance. The first error that does not affect the trial balance is the error of omission. Now, what is error of omission? Error of omission occurs whereby, just from what the word suggests, a transaction is entirely omitted from the books of original entry or from recording, such that a transaction is not recorded either on the debit side or on the credit side. So now, because neither the debit nor the credit is recorded, the trial balance will still agree without this transaction being posted. For example, if you have journals or if you have transactions maybe on first, second, third, as you are recording, you forget a transaction maybe from first. That transaction not being recorded will not affect the trial balance because the other transactions that were recorded will agree. That is, the debits and credits will agree. So an example, e.g., you have purchases of goods worth shillings 1,000 that were bought by check are not recorded. So because our intention is to correct the error, then we have to think, how do we correct this error? Now, because it was not recorded, the work will be very easy here. We just have to record that transaction because it was not recorded. So reading through this statement where it says, purchases of goods worth shillings 1,000 by check were not recorded. The necessary journal entries to correct that error is, number one, we have to debit purchases because you are being told clearly that there was purchases of goods. And we know that purchases represents an expense. When expenses increase, we debit. So if you do not know when to debit or credit, you need to refer to one of the videos that I have done before on accounting cycle part 1 so that you know when to debit and when to credit. But here we are saying purchases is going to be debited, and definitely because these purchases were paid for by check, the amount of the money in the bank has decreased. Therefore, there it means that our asset called bank has decreased. Therefore, we are going to credit the bank. So this one we are just outrightly recording. And you are going to say that this is to record a purchase of goods by check that was omitted. So this is the first error that does not affect a trial balance. It is simply an error of omission. A transaction has been omitted. It has not been posted either in the debit or in the credit. Therefore, to rectify the error, you simply post it on the debit and on the credit of the respective accounts, as we have explained in our example. The second error, number 2, is error of commission. Now, here, an error occurs whereby an entry is made in the correct side. When I say correct side, if it was supposed to be debited, it is debited. If it was supposed to be credited, it is credited. But in the wrong books, but the books are of the same class. What do I mean by this? For example, you have two debtors. You have debtor A and debtor B. Debtor A has bought some goods on credit, but instead of debiting the account of debtor A, innocently, by mistake, you debit the account of debtor B. Now, the debit has been done. Here simply means you have done the right thing, you have debited, but in the wrong account. But what is common about these two accounts? They are of the same class. Each of them is a debtor. One is debtor A, the other one is debtor B. So that is an error of commission. So again, in our example, it says here that goods sold to Jane on credit worth shillings 10,000 were debited to the account of debtor Janet. Now you can see here even the accountant probably was in a hurry, and Jane and Janet both are debtors. It is Jane who bought goods on credit, and when Jane buys goods on credit, we are supposed to debit the account of Jane. Of course, and then we are going to credit sales. That is the right thing to do. Jane has bought on credit. We are supposed to debit the account of debtor Jane. And then, of course, we are going to credit sales. So the sales has been credited, all right? But the debit has been put in the wrong account. It has been put in the account of debtor Janet. Now we need to pass a journal entry to correct this error. Now, here, first of all, to do the right thing that we were supposed to do was to debit debtor Jane. That is what we are going to do, the right thing first. So the first thing to do is to debit debtor Jane with 10,000. That is to do the right thing that was not done. And then we are going to correct the wrong thing that had been done. Now, since the account of debtor Janet was debited here by mistake, we have to credit it. So, by simply saying plus 1 minus 1, the effect is 0. Or simply what I'm saying, if debtor Janet was debited by mistake, we are going to credit debtor Janet by an equivalent amount so that that account is offset, or that account is cancelled. So that we are debited 10,000, now we credit 10,000 to the account of debtor Janet, and they balance off. One is positive 10,000, the other one is negative 10,000. So to do the right thing now, or to correct that error of commission, we are going to debit debtor Jane. This is what should have been done from the beginning with the 10,000. Then we are going to credit debtor Janet with 10,000 to correct the account that had wrongly been posted, or the amount that wrongly was posted to their account. So I hope you understand this error of commission. It is simply where you record a transaction in the right side, but in the wrong account, but these accounts are of the same class. So I've given an example here with the debtors. The two accounts also would be creditors. The two accounts would also be assets. But what you are saying that the accounts have to be of the same class for it to be an error of commission. The next one is error of principle. Now, an error of principle results from contradicting the principles of accounting. It results from lack of knowledge into the principles of accounting, where you classify maybe an expense into an asset or an asset into an expense. You are not sure which is which. So an error of principle, this one occurs whereby an entry is made in the correct side. Again, if it was supposed to be debited, it is debited. If it was supposed to be credited, it is credited. So it is recorded on the correct side, but in the wrong class of account. So this time, the class of account is wrong. For example, you bought a machinery or you bought a car. Instead of debiting machinery account, you debit purchases account. You see here, you have done the right thing, you have debited. But in the wrong account, and these two accounts, purchases is an expense, while machinery is an asset. So you have debited, yes, but in the wrong account, and these accounts are not of the same class. So, an error of principle, an example we have here, a purchases of machinery for shillings 50,000 was debited to purchases account. It's just simply what I was saying. We need to correct this error. Number one, when you go to correct an error, we have said, first of all, do the right thing. What is the right thing to do? We are being told here that a purchase of machinery for shillings 50,000 was debited to purchases account. That was not the right thing to do. The right thing was to debit machinery. So to correct the error, the first thing we are going to do is to the first thing we are going to do is to debit machinery, which was the right thing to do. So we are going to debit machinery with the 50,000. Then the account that had been debited, which is purchases by error, we have now to correct it. And since it was debited by mistake, we are going to credit it to offset that error. So I repeat, we are going to start by doing the right thing. The right thing was to debit machinery. That is what we are going to do, debit machinery. Then we are going to correct the error. In purchases, it is wrongly debited, therefore we are going to credit. So we are going to credit purchases to correct that error of principle. So again, we have said that this error occurs when you debit or credit correctly, but in the wrong account, and this account is not of the same class. So again, it results from lack of knowledge, maybe in accounting, or just contradicting on the principles. All right, the next one is error of original entry. Now, an error of original entry results from amounts. So it results from, for example, it occurs when a transaction is posted to the correct account, yes? So here the account to be debited is debited, the account to be credited is credited, but the amounts posted are not correct. So what you are saying here is that, for example, a cash sale of shillings 950 recorded in the books as 590. This is an error of original entry. So we are saying here the error does not relate to the account. I repeat, the error relates to the amount. But for it to be an error of original entry, both accounts that were involved have to have been either debited and credited, but with this wrong amount. That is, both of the accounts have that wrong amount. For example here, a cash sale of shillings 950 recorded in the books as 590. Now, let's begin with asking ourselves, there was a cash sale. Which accounts are affected? The accounts being affected here is cash, and the other account is sales. Cash was received. Therefore, cash increased. It was debited. That is an asset, it is debited. Sales is a revenue. A revenue also increased, hereby a sale, it was credited. But the amount that were put in these two accounts, that is the cash account and the sales account, the amount that was put was 590 instead of 950. Therefore, we can see that the two accounts are undercast. They have less. They have less by 360. 360 is the difference between 950 and 590. So the two accounts here, the cash and the sales, they are undercast by shillings 360. So we need to increase them. We need to increase them by the amount of the error. So for them to be equivalent to 950, considering they already have 590, we are going to add the amount of 360 to each of those two accounts. So we are going to debit cash of 360 to move it from 590 plus 360. Now it is going to be 950. And the sales account, we are also going to credit by 360 to move it from 590 to 950. So both accounts had the error. And this time you are saying the error was undercasting because 590 is less than what should have been put there as 950. Now, to understand this error more, it is also sometimes called the transposition error. By transposition, we mean, you can see here there is transposition of figures. So this is a very common error whereby you hear 950, but you record 590. Innocently, it's just a transposition of figures. But for it to be an error of original entry, both accounts, the debit and the credit, have to have recorded the wrong amount. And now when you correct in both of them. So again, just to say what you have said here is that a cash sale of 950 was recorded as 590. It was undercast, therefore, because here two accounts being affected is cash and sales, we are going to increase both the cash and the sales respectively by 360 so that you are able to get the amount of 950. And that is an error of original entry. The other error are what we call compensating errors. Now, what is compensation? Hereby, it is where two errors, one on the debit side and the other on the credit side, these two errors are equal, therefore they compensate each other. You make an error of 35,000 on the debit side, for example, you also make an error of 35,000 on the credit side. The two errors cancel each other. Therefore, the trial balance is going to agree. Because there is overcasting probably on debit side, there is also overcasting on the credit side. Therefore, the trial balance, the totals will still agree. Now, it occurs when an incorrect amount on the debit side or the credit side is coincidentally equalized by an equal error on the opposite side. Here the key point is that it is coincidental. It was not intentional. So, our example says that purchases account is overcast by shillings 100, and of course, coincidentally, purchases sales account is also overcast by shillings 100. Now, we realize here, purchases is an expense. It is debited. Sales is a revenue. It is credited. Both of them are overcast. Each one of them has 100 shillings above what should have been recorded. So those two errors, the error of purchases overcast by 100 on the debit side and the error of sales overcast by 100 on the credit side, they are cancelling each other or they are balancing off each other. These errors are compensating each other. Now we need to correct them. For us to correct these errors, we have to pass a journal entry to correct them. We are saying that the purchases is overstated by 100 and the purchases is overstated by 100 on the debit side. We need to reduce it. How do we reduce? How do we reduce the purchases? Because it is overstated by 100 and it is on the debit side. For us to reduce the purchases, we have to credit the purchases. So we are reducing by the overcast amount. So for the purchases which is debited, we are going to credit to reduce it by 100. The sales account, which is a revenue account, therefore it is credited. It was 100 shillings above the amount. So that credit side is overcast by 100. We need to reduce that credit side by 100. So we are going to debit. So we are going to debit the sales to reduce it by 100. And you are going to credit the purchases to reduce it by 100. So this time, the errors are not errors where we are recording something that was not recorded. Here the error is that we are reducing the accounts that have already been overcast. They have more than what they should have. Therefore, if the account is debited, you are going to credit to reduce it. If the account is credited, you are going to debit to reduce it. So that is what brings us here to having that the sales which was credited, now we are debiting the 100. And the purchases which was debited, now we are crediting 100 to reduce them by those overcast amounts. So that is how you correct compensating errors. Okay. So the next one is a complete reversal of entries. Now this one again would be an issue of lack of knowledge probably on the accounts and lack of knowledge on the elements of financial statements and when to debit and credit. And if you find that you don't know this, when to debit, when to credit, it would resort to this error which we are calling complete reversal of entries. Now, what happens here? The account to be debited is credited. So the account you are supposed to debit, you do the opposite. You reverse, you credit. And the account that you are supposed to credit, you debit. The account that you are supposed to credit, you debit. So you are doing complete reversal of the entries. So simply, it occurs when the account to be debited is credited, while the account to be credited is debited. So in short, you are exchanging the accounts. You are doing the complete opposite of what you are expected to do. E.g., we have here cash drawn from the bank of shillings 150 for personal use is posted as a debit in the bank account and credit in drawings. Now, let's first of all just simply focus on the first statement here that says that cash was drawn from the bank of shillings 150 for personal use. Up to that point, let's focus on that. The proprietor or the owner of a business has withdrawn some of the money for personal use. When a proprietor takes some money for personal use, we say he has withdrawn or there is a drawing. The appropriate or the right thing to do is to debit the drawings, because a drawing is a reduction of capital. It reduces the capital that you had invested. So the first thing here to do is to debit the drawing, because money has been, capital has been reduced. The second thing to do is to reduce the amount of money in the bank. Therefore, we are supposed to credit the bank. That is the right thing to do. Up to this point, we are saying cash has been drawn from the bank of shillings 150,000 for personal use. So the right thing there to do is just to simply debit drawings, credit bank. Drawings have increased. When drawings increase, you debit. Bank has reduced. When bank reduces, you credit, because it is an asset. That is the right thing to do. But now here, because there is complete reversal of entries, the exact opposite is what is done. So it says there that it is posted as a debit in the bank and a credit in the drawings. So we now have to reverse these entries. And for us to reverse an entry whereby what was debited is supposed to be credited and what is credited was supposed to be debited, we have to multiply the amount by 2. So here we are going to say that now we have to debit drawings, but with 300 shillings, which is 150 multiplied by 2, and then you have to credit bank by an equivalent amount of 300, which is 150 times 2. Now maybe you're wondering, why do we have to multiply by 2? Now imagine, let's start with the drawings. Instead of debiting, you credited. Therefore, you are beginning with, can show you this. So what you are saying is that you have, like here for example, this is the drawings, and this is the bank. Money has been withdrawn from the bank, shillings 150. So what are you supposed to do? The right thing to do is to credit. And the right thing to do here is to debit. Yes, that is the right thing to do. But the proprietor did not do that. In fact, they did the complete opposite. So let's see what they did. They did the complete opposite. So the account here is debited. So they debited the bank and they credited the drawings. Now we have to correct this error. And what I'm saying is that for us to correct this error, you have to pass the entry multiplied by 2 times. So for us to remove this from this side and bring it to this side, we first of all have to put 150 the first time. This now cancels each other. Simply we are saying it is plus 1 minus 1, which is the net effect is 0. Then for this one, we are also going to say we credit 150, which is now like plus 150 minus 150. The net effect is 0. Now you have just corrected the error, but have you done the right thing? So for you to be able to do now the right thing, you still have now to do the right thing, which was now debit the drawings and then credit the bank to do the right thing. So what I'm simply saying is that you have to pass it 2 times. The first time is to correct the error, and then the second time is to do the right thing. Also here, the first time is going to correct the error, and then the second time is to do the right thing. Now instead of doing 2 times and 2 times, what you are going to simply do is the 150 multiplied by 2. So therefore you are going to pass the entry as 300, and here it is 150 divided, not divided, so sorry, multiplied, not divided. That is 150 multiplied by 2, giving us 300, and also 150 multiplied by 2, giving us 300. So this is what now you are supposed to do, so that you can see here now that the drawings, you are going to debit 300, and the bank, you are going to credit 300 to correct the error because it had been done in the wrong side. So this marks the end of errors not affecting the trial balance. So in our next video, we are going to look at errors that affect the trial balance. So watch out for part 2 of this video. Also, if you have found this to be helpful, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.